Sometimes the loudest acts of respect are done in silence by those who understand it best. Let us know in the comment section below where you're watching from and how moments like these have touched your life. Roderick Scott sat in his booth at Lou's Grill, hunched over a chipped porcelain mug filled with black coffee that hadn't been fresh since sunrise. He never complained. The place was familiar. The cracking leather seats, the faint buzz of neon signs, the scent of burnt toast that clung to everything. It reminded him of places he used to go after long shifts on base, back when the world felt heavier but made more sense. His jacket was worn, sleeves frayed from years of being pulled over calloused arms. Faded into the right shoulder was the barely visible ghost of a 1st Cavalry Division patch, threadbare from too many washes. Most people didn't notice it. Most didn't look at him at all. He preferred it that way. The clang of the kitchen window opening didn't startle him. Neither did the voice that followed. "Same as yesterday, Roderick?" Nina Morales leaned out, her hair tied up in a red bandana, grease-splotched apron half untied. He lifted 2 fingers in reply, his version of a nod. Nina smiled. She knew he didn't talk much, but she always took the time. What she didn't know, what almost no one in town did, was that Roderick had once been the kind of man young soldiers feared disappointing. He had commanded men through the dense jungles of Cambodia, through dust storms in Iraq, through fire and silence. But he never brought that part of himself back home. He'd buried it like an old sidearm, kept close, never seen, until the day someone dug it back up. The bell over the diner door jingled sharply. 3 men walked in like they owned the place, their boots too clean, voices too loud. One of them, tall and square-jawed with a ball cap turned backwards, scanned the room like he was daring someone to make eye contact. He looked like trouble, in a varsity jacket. "Dude, I'm telling you," he laughed, nudging the shorter one beside him, "that guy's been sitting here since we got coffee an hour ago. Look at him. Guy hasn't blinked." Roderick didn't flinch. He'd been stared down by men with more hate in their eyes and less sense in their hearts. The taller one wasn't done. "I bet he sleeps in here, like lives in that booth." The third one chuckled nervously. "You think he's homeless?" "Homeless? Nah." The tall one smirked, lowering his voice, but not enough. "Old Army, maybe. One of those who thinks a war tattoo earns him a free breakfast, sitting there like a ghost." Nina appeared from the kitchen before Roderick could move, her expression neutral, but her hands clenched tight around the plate she carried. "You boys need menus?" "We're good," the tall one said, not looking at her. "But you might want to check on Grandpa Ghost over there. He's been carbon dating that coffee since the 60s. Roderick's eyes stayed on his mug. His fingers slowly tapped once, twice, against the side, a rhythm only he understood. Nina's jaw twitched. "He's a regular. Doesn't bother anyone." "Didn't say he did," the guy said, grinning at his friends. "Just saying he's got that 1,000-yard stare. Makes the eggs taste like PTSD." The diner grew quieter. Even the sizzling in the kitchen seemed to pull back. Roderick reached into his jacket slowly. The tall one shifted just a bit, just enough for his shoulders to tense. But Roderick didn't pull out a weapon or a wallet. He set an old pair of wire-framed glasses on the table next to a folded slip of yellowed paper. He didn't read it anymore, but he always kept it nearby. He unfolded it now. The tall one squinted. "What's that? War poem? Obituary?" Roderick said nothing. He laid the paper flat on the table and stared at it. On it, faded almost to ghostwriting, were 11 names. Below them a date, and next to it, in careful block letters, King S.T.A. Firebase Ripcord. The mood shifted. None of the young men knew what that meant. Not really. But something in the silence changed them. It wasn't loud. It didn't scream respect. But it demanded it. Still, the tall one wasn't ready to back off. He scoffed, then turned toward the counter. "Whatever, man. Must be nice to sit around and get clapped for doing nothing now." Nina opened her mouth to say something, anything, but then the diner door swung again. This time a man in uniform stepped through. He wore the unmistakable tan flight jacket of a Navy SEAL, trim, squared shoulders, sharp eyes that scanned quickly and locked with Roderick's. The SEAL paused. Then, in front of everyone, he stopped walking, heels together, hands at his sides. And he saluted. Not a casual nod, not a respectful glance. A full, regulated salute. The tall guy turned around, confused. "Who's he?" The SEAL lowered his arm, walked over to Roderick and extended a hand. "Sergeant Major Roderick Scott. Firebase Ripcord, right?" Roderick finally looked up, and for the first time that morning his expression cracked. A flicker of surprise, of something not quite grief and not quite pride. He took the man's hand. "Name's Logan Pierce," the SEAL said. "My uncle served under you. Said if I ever ran into you, I owed you a thank you and a beer." The booth went silent. The whole diner did. And suddenly, all those things no one noticed about Roderick, his posture, his eyes, the way he always sat with his back to the wall, felt different. The tall guy took a step back. Roderick's voice came low, gravel soft. "What happened to your uncle?" Logan didn't hesitate. "Named his first kid after you, and he made it back. Said he owed that to you, too." Roderick leaned back slowly, the corner of his mouth tugging into something between a grimace and a smile. The tall guy stared, mouth open but nothing coming out. "Hey," Logan said without turning. "If you don't understand respect, that's fine. Just don't talk when it's happening." Nobody laughed now, and Roderick Scott, the man no one remembered, nodded once. It had begun. The air inside Lou's grill didn't change, but everything else did. The booth that had always been just another piece of cracked vinyl now felt like a place of pilgrimage. Nina stood still behind the counter, her hand slowly setting down a glass she hadn't realized she'd been holding. One of the truckers near the window, a man named Buck, who'd never spoken more than 5 words to Roderick in 5 years, turned in his seat like he was seeing something holy. Logan Pierce stood respectfully beside the booth, but his eyes never left Roderick's. There was no pity in his expression, only recognition, and something deeper, reverence. And Roderick, who had learned to deflect attention with silence and stiff posture, didn't look away. He nodded toward the seat across from him. "Sit down, son. No need to stand on parade." Logan slid into the booth, resting his forearms on the table. He didn't speak for a moment, letting the moment settle. Roderick reached for his mug, took a sip, and grimaced. "Still tastes like brake fluid," he muttered. Logan smiled faintly. "But it's familiar." "Too familiar." The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It had weight, like they were both turning over unspoken memories on either side of a battlefield that had long since gone cold. Nina walked over and gently refilled Roderick's cup, then placed a second in front of Logan. "On the house," she said, and disappeared before Logan could thank her. Roderick studied the young SEAL now that he was closer. Short-cut hair, hands scarred from training, eyes that had seen too much for their age. "You said your uncle served under me?" "Yes, sir," Logan replied. "Mason Pierce, Echo Company, 2nd Battalion. A Firebase Ripcord, 1970. You pulled him out after a mortar round took half his squad." Roderick blinked slowly. That name, that mission, was buried deep, but not lost. The jungle, the screaming, the sound of static and blood. He remembered the kid, Mason, how his leg had been shredded, but he'd clung to his rifle like it was the only thing keeping him alive. "I didn't think he made it." Logan nodded. "Almost didn't. Lost the leg, but he made it home. Started a shop, raised a family. Said he owed you more than just his life. Said you didn't just pull him out, you carried him." Roderick looked down at his calloused hands, as if expecting to find blood still crusted in the lines. "I carried a lot of men," he said quietly. Didn't bring them all home. The words dropped like iron into the space between them. Logan didn't flinch. He knew that, he said, and he never forgot what you did. They sat there, 2 generations bound by a memory neither of them owned fully but both carried pieces of. Roderick leaned back, cracking his neck slowly, the stiffness of years lodged in his spine. I'm not a hero, son. No, sir, Logan said. You're a soldier. There's a difference. Roderick's jaw tensed. He didn't like compliments. They tasted too much like lies people told themselves to feel better. But coming from Logan, it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like something earned. From the corner of the diner, the tall kid in the varsity jacket was watching, his bravado peeled back, revealing a thin sheet of discomfort. His friends whispered, shifting in their seats. Logan noticed, feeling like I'm a ghost, Roderick said. Only now, they're not sure if I'm real. Let them stare. Roderick chuckled, but it sounded more like gravel shifting. You here on leave? He asked. Logan nodded. 30 days, visiting family in Lakewood. Thought I'd grab lunch before heading out. Then I saw you sitting here, and... He shrugged. I knew I had to stop. You didn't have to do anything, Roderick said. That salute, it meant something. I figured it would. Roderick reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo, yellowed at the edges. He placed it between them on the table. 5 young men in uniform, standing in front of a sandbag bunker, arms slung over shoulders, smiles too wide for what they'd been through. That's all that's left, Roderick said. Me and memories. Logan studied the photo, his expression sobering. They don't teach that in training, he said. They can't. Outside, a car honked. Life kept going. But inside Lou's, time slowed down to the rhythm of 2 men trading invisible burdens. Logan finished his coffee and stood. Would it be okay if I stopped by again? Roderick looked up at him for a long moment. Do you really want to spend your leave with an old man in a diner? Logan grinned. Sir, I can't think of anyone better to spend it with. Roderick's eyes softened. Then yeah, come on back. I'll even let you buy the coffee next time. They shook hands, a gesture with no flash, no ceremony, just strength and gratitude exchanged in silence. As Logan turned to leave, he paused near the counter. He looked at the tall kid who had mocked Roderick not an hour before. You ever serve? He asked. The kid shook his head, eyes wide. Logan leaned forward just enough to make the space between them feel small. Then shut up next time. You're breathing because of men like him. He walked out before the kid could respond. Roderick watched him go. Then he turned back to his coffee and took a slow sip. Still tasted like brake fluid. But now, it also tasted like something else. Tried the next morning, the regulars at Lou's Grill found something unexpected waiting for them on the front window. A note, Scotch, taped to the glass, it read, To the man in the back booth, thank you for your service. You reminded me what respect looks like. No name, just black ink on a torn piece of notebook paper. Nina found it as she unlocked the front door, and when Roderick came in an hour later and shuffled to his usual booth, she handed it to him wordlessly. He read it once, twice, said nothing, just folded it neatly and tucked it inside his jacket beside the yellowed photograph. By noon, 2 more notes appeared. One on the napkin holder, written in a child's crooked handwriting, My dad says you're a real hero. Another slid under the salt shaker, Saw what happened yesterday. You carried yourself with more honor than any medal could ever say. Roderick sat silently, reading them as though each was a mission report. Nina watched him carefully from behind the counter. Something was shifting in him, not fast, not loud, but real. For years, he'd trained himself to be invisible, to not expect anything from the people around him except the occasional polite nod or distant glance. He'd built walls so high even he'd forgotten what was behind them. But now the town was answering, one person at a time. Later that day, an older man in khakis and a flannel jacket came in and paused near Roderick's table. Roderick didn't look up until the man cleared his throat. "You're Roderick Scott, right?" He nodded. "Charlie Henson," the man said, offering a hand. "I was just a kid when you were in uniform, but I remember your name. My brother served in the 25th, said you were legend at Ripcord." Roderick didn't know what to say to that, so he just offered his hand. Charlie shook it like it meant something. "I own the barber shop down on Union if you ever want to cut on the house. We take care of our own." It was small, but it wasn't small at all. That weekend, Nina brought in a shoebox. "Found this in the back," she said, setting it down next to Roderick's coffee. "Figured it might be time." Inside were photos, old ones, clippings from local papers. Roderick in uniform next to a general whose name was long forgotten, a parade from the early ADS, a faded ribbon, a commendation typed on yellowing paper. Too different. "How did you—" "My uncle used to own this place," she said. "Kept a drawer of local hero stuff. Said he was saving it for when folks started remembering what mattered again." Roderick touched the photo of himself, younger, upright, eyes alert. And he didn't recognize that man. Not really, but it felt good to see him again. On Monday, Logan came back. Same jacket, same calm. But this time, he didn't come alone. 2 other servicemen followed, one in Army camo, the other in Marine dress blues. They didn't say much, just approached the table and offered quiet greetings. Logan gestured toward the counter. "Do you mind if we sit nearby?" Roderick raised an eyebrow. "You starting a squad in here?" "Something like that." They sat in the booths around him like satellites orbiting a center of gravity. None of them tried to own the conversation. They didn't swap war stories for attention. It was presence, pure and powerful, that made the room feel full of something sacred. Nina brought out a pot of coffee. "You all getting the senior discount?" she teased. The Marine grinned. "Only if we earn it." She poured without asking. Later, when Logan got up to leave, he placed a worn challenge coin on the table. Roderick looked at it. "Take it," Logan said. "Not for what you did then, for what you're doing now." Roderick traced the edge of the coin with his thumb, silent. That evening the mayor called. Mayor Emily Ross had been in office for only 3 years, young for the job but serious about it. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mr. Scott, I've heard from a dozen people about what happened at Lou's. More, actually. Some veterans, some teachers, one 9-year-old who cried writing you a thank you note." Roderick didn't know how to answer. "I'd like to talk to you about something," she continued. "Something a little overdue. That Friday, the town paper ran a story. Headline, 'The Ghost in the Booth is a Hero Among Us.' The article was short but powerful. It talked about ripcord. It talked about silence. It talked about how people forget and how sometimes they get a second chance to remember." By Saturday, Roderick couldn't finish a cup of coffee without someone shaking his hand. Veterans started showing up, quiet and respectful. Parents brought their kids over, whispering to them, "Say thank you to the soldier." Some of the kids drew him pictures, crooked American flags, tanks with big wheels, stick figures and helmets. He saved every one. And yet he never changed booths. Still sat in the same seat, back to the wall. Still watched the room the way he always had, aware, alert. But now, when someone walked through the door, they saw him. They knew. And for the first time in a long time, Roderick Scott let them. He wasn't hiding anymore. Not from them, not from himself. The day began like any other, with the hiss of the coffee pot and the low hum of the diner's neon sign flickering to life. But something was different. Nina could feel it before the sun even cracked the horizon. There was a buzz in town, not the usual gossip or weather complaints. No, this was the kind of hum you feel in your chest, low and steady, like something important was about to happen. At 7:02 a.m., Roderick Scott walked through the front door of Lou's Grill, his boots clicking softly against the floor. He wore the same faded field jacket, the same jeans, the same worn expression, until he saw the booth. Someone had draped an American flag across the backrest, folded perfectly, not in mourning, but in honor. Next to it, a single white envelope sat against his coffee cup. Roderick approached slowly. He didn't touch the flag. He picked up the envelope. It was from Nina. He opened it. You never asked for thanks, but you gave more than most ever will. Sit. Your coffee's on me today, and every day after. He sat down, the stiffness in his joints a little lighter somehow. Within minutes, the diner filled up. It wasn't loud, no one made a show of it, but familiar faces kept walking in. Logan came first, then Charlie Hinson from the barber shop. Then the two vets who had joined Logan last week. Then Nina's uncle, who hadn't stepped foot in Lou's since 2011, wearing his old navy peacoat like it was his Sunday best. By 8 o'clock, there were people standing. Not for food, not even for coffee. For him, Mayor Emily Ross arrived last. She came in without a staff or photographers, no podium, just her and a small wooden plaque she carried in both hands. "Mr. Scott," she said, standing by the booth, "on behalf of this town, I want to offer a formal apology and a long overdue acknowledgement." Roderick looked up at her, tired but attentive. "For years your service was invisible to us, not because you were hiding, but because we weren't looking. We failed you, and we are sorry." He placed the plaque on the table. It read, "Roderick Scott, a man of quiet valor, honored by Oak Ridge for service beyond the battlefield." The room was still. Nina leaned against the counter, eyes glassy. Mayor Ross wasn't finished. "That's not the only reason I came," she continued. "The town council voted unanimously to rename Jackson Avenue." Someone in the back gasped quietly. "It'll now be called Roderick Scott Way, because we believe the streets of our town should carry the names of those who walked them with integrity." Roderick didn't speak. He looked down at the plaque, then up at the flag on his booth, and slowly, so slowly, he stood. His voice, when it came, was gravel, but steady. "I didn't do anything special." Logan stepped forward. "With respect, sir, you did everything." Roderick looked out at the room, at the faces he once passed without notice, at the people who now held coffee cups like communion, at the little girl near the counter with a handmade sign that read, "Thank you, Mr. Roderick." His throat tightened. "I was just doing my job," he said. "Looking out for my boys, making sure they got home. Some of them didn't. Most of me didn't." He looked down at his hands, opened them, closed them again. "I sat in this booth for years thinking it didn't matter if anyone remembered, but it does. It always did." He looked to Logan. "And you, your uncle, you give me something I thought was gone." Logan nodded, eyes damp but proud. Roderick cleared his throat. "Me accept this. For them, for all of them." The room broke into quiet applause. Not the kind meant for performance, but the kind meant for respect. Real, heavy, earned. Nina walked over with a steaming cup of coffee. She set it down, gently, like a sacred offering. "Try it," she said. "I actually cleaned the machine." He took a sip. Smiled. "Not bad." The rest of the day unfolded in small miracles. People came and went, leaving notes, shaking his hand, some just placing a hand on his shoulder and walking away. Roderick didn't move from his booth, but the booth became something else. An altar, a gathering place, a reminder. The tall kid who'd mocked him never returned, but his mother came in and apologized, brought cookies, left a note that simply said, "We didn't raise him to be that way, we're sorry." By late afternoon, a news van parked across the street. Roderick turned his chair slightly, away from the window. He didn't want that kind of spotlight. But he didn't leave either. When dusk arrived, Logan returned, this time without a uniform, just jeans and a leather jacket. He sat across from Roderick again, like nothing had changed. Everything had. They talked for an hour about baseball, about bad diner food overseas, about nothing that mattered and everything that did. And as the sun dipped below the trees and cast golden light across the face of the diner, Logan stood and extended one last handshake. "I'll be heading out in the morning," he said. Roderick stood too. "You come back here. You understand? Well, you come back." They shook hands. Outside, Logan paused before getting into his truck. He turned, gave a crisp nod, and then drove away. Roderick watched him disappear down the road. Roderick Scott Way. He turned back toward the diner. His booth waited for him. His coffee was still warm, and for the first time in decades, he didn't feel forgotten. He felt whole.